Hey everyone, what is up? Just wanted to come and have a little one-on-one time with you guys. So, I shared in my stories this that I'm about to share, but I wanted to expand on it a little bit more. And so, today makes 7 days since I started my cleanse, my reset. Started it on Monday. Please say hi, by the way, as you're joining, because I can't see when you hop on using this. So I only see when you comment if you're on live. So say hi so I can say hi to you. It's been 7 days since I started this reset. And the first time I did this, I wrote a blog about my experience. And it's a specific 21-day program that I'm doing. So it is a structured program. There is a plan, there is an outline, there is a schedule, there is certain meals that you're eating. It's not just a random thing that I chose from the internet. It's a real thing. And the first time I did it was 3 years ago. And my number one takeaway from that experience was befriending my hunger. That's what I called my blog, was befriending my hunger. Because up until that moment in time, I lived with this fear of feeling hungry. And so I ate to basically compensate for that fear. So before I could get to the point where I started to feel hungry, I would start eating food, basically is what I would do. I would start to eat food, even if it wasn't really time yet for me to eat. Even if it wasn't yet, like my body wasn't ready for food, I would still eat because I didn't want to feel hunger. And I remember the first time that I did this, I was so blown away by sitting with my hunger, letting myself feel hungry, and not dying, basically. Hi, Kari. See, I can only see your comments on my phone. I can't even see you on my... This is so weird. Anyways. So I remember sitting with my hunger and feeling my hunger and feeling like, wow, if you're hungry, nothing bad happens. You just have a feeling and then you eat. You decide when you're going to eat, right? And I know this seems like common sense, but when you have an obsessive issue with food, when you're addicted to food, when you're have an unhealthy relationship to food, that doesn't seem so common sense. It doesn't seem like such a logical thing. And you have all kinds of distorted relationships to food, which is what I was living in. And so the very first moment that I was able to break up with my fear of being hungry, I never had that fear again. So it wasn't like, oh, I was feeling great during the 21 days I was doing this, and then when I left it, I reverted back to that behavior. No, it never came back. That fear of feeling hungry actually never happened for me again. So even though I continued to heal my relationship to food and it wasn't a perfect relationship, that particular component of it was gone. And so when I did the reset then, I immediately felt the emotional and mental pain 3 years ago. I was highly cognizant of it. My body felt kind of like drowsy the first couple days I was detoxing, which is normal, but I became pretty immediately aware of the emotional discomfort and the mental discomfort of having to sit with my hunger and having to sit with, okay, I'm eating this, but I want to eat that. And we're not eating that, we're eating this, okay? So pain is multi-leveled, okay? When I use the word pain, I'm really just talking about a sensation that's activating inside of you. And we can feel pain activated via a physical sensation, like shoulders are paining me. Nerve pain has a distinct fire-like feeling. Joint pain has a distinct feeling. Muscle fatigue, soreness has a distinct feeling. Hunger, things of that nature. Someone pinches you, prods you, you feel pain. Okay, so there's that level. There's also emotional pain, when you feel despair, when you feel grief, when you feel heartbroken. That's another activation, and it happens in the emotional body, and it's a sorrowful feeling, and you feel it usually right here in the middle of your chest, sometimes in your gut. And then you have mental pain, and that's a different experience. That's like worry, concern, obsessive thinking, wallowing, things of that nature, when you're like, oh, I should have said that, I shouldn't have done that, I can't believe I did that. That kind of stuff is mental pain. You're experiencing pain in your mental body. Okay, so we have different activations in our bodies at different points in time, and they show up differently. And sometimes you have more than one happening at the same time, but I just wanted to kind of show you what they are. Now, since I began this detox, 7 days ago, I immediately was hit with an excruciating lower body pain. And when I say excruciating, I mean knock the wind right out of you. I mean, it started as lumbar pain, so in the lower vertebrae of my back. And so if you have your hips and then your legs, okay, the pain would start here in the center of my back and then radiate outwards over my hip on both sides and go right down both my legs. And it would go down the side of my leg, like where the IT band is, down the side of my thigh, wrap around the front and go down the front of my shins, okay, all the way to my ankle. Now, for those of you who are therapists or in the medical body field, that really sounds like sciatic pain. It really mimics the sensation of sciatica, except sciatica is usually unilateral, not bilateral. So you usually experience true sciatica on one side of the body because there's usually a displacement and there's usually something that's funky or crimped, and it could be piriformis syndrome as well, where a muscle's cramping the nerve and so you feel it down one side. But I was having it down both sides. And the pain I was having didn't feel muscular and it didn't feel structural. It felt like nerve pain. It felt like fire coming down my legs. Okay, so Kari, you're very familiar. Kari said this is her daily life on the right side of her leg. Okay. So this was happening to me consistently. I mean, for 5 to 6 days, it was just pain going to sleep. It would wake me up. I couldn't sleep at night. I'd be up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. My husband, bless his heart, is like massaging me as best as he possibly can in my spine, trying to get this sensation to go away. Because I got so bad, I actually had to take pain pills, which when you're detoxing, you obviously don't want to do. But I couldn't sit. I couldn't even walk. I couldn't lay down. There was no comfortable position for me to be in. The pain was so agonizing. And it wouldn't let up. I mean, maybe if you massage me for a little bit, it would, but really no. There was no letting up sensation. And I was so frustrated over it. I was like, what is this about? Why do I have this pain in my body? Why do I feel this? And knowing what I know, the years that I did massage therapy and worked with chronic pain and injury, I understand the complexity of the multiple bodies. I understand the relationship between mental, emotional, and physical body and how they weave together to create activations or pain in the body. I get that. But in the moment it was happening to me, I had an intuition that this was an emotional thing, not necessarily physical, but I was still reverting back to the physical. Oh, maybe I need an adjustment. Maybe I should get a massage. This is where, and this I think where most of us live. Most of us immediately go to, I have a physical pain. How do I fix the physical problem? Which makes logical sense. Okay. But even as I was being worked on and I was stretching and I was doing all the things, it wasn't going away. It wasn't budging. The sensation was very, very persistent. And I knew that it was due to the onset of the detox because it started right when I started detoxing. So I was like, okay, this is linked to detoxing because it happened right when I started detoxing. So something is trying to move. It's nerve pain. So it's moving through my meridian, through my channels, very activated. It's in the lower part of the body. Hi, Shannon. Hi, Greg. Hi, Pam. It's in the lower part of the body, okay? So the lumbar spine is usually associated with security. So the root chakra, the lumbar part of the body, I see that in my clients and in myself connected to security. Also ancestral issues. So if you have ancestral lineage trauma, it'll show up in the root chakra. Or even birth family trauma, it shows up in the root chakra. Financial concerns shows up in the root chakra. So anything that's really about foundation and feeling secure shows up in the root chakra. So I was like, hey, Greg. Oh, it sounds like you and you have to go. I mean, like to the bathroom? I don't have that sensation when I have to go. Hey, Sarah. So I'm having that feeling and I'm like, okay, what is going on with this security sensation, right? This feeling of security. There's clearly something that's trying to be processed, but I couldn't activate it. It hadn't moved yet. It hadn't transformed. It was still just sitting in my root chakra and painting and painting and painting. And I was really at my wit's end. I was getting to a point where I was like, I literally cannot do anything. I cannot feel anything. I'm just overly focused on this pain. That's when I started meditating. And I started meditating in the morning for 15 minutes just to really calm the anxiety because I was having a lot of anxiety about it and I just wanted to set a different tone while I was detoxing. I really wanted to work on prayer and meditation. And in the middle of that meditation, which was only 15 minutes, so about 7 minutes in, all of a sudden my pain was gone. So I'm 7 minutes into this meditation and I no longer have lower body pain. And I'm sitting, which is usually the most uncomfortable position to me be in when I'm having that sensation. So it's gone. And then I finish the meditation, it slowly starts to come back, but I saw the window. I saw the window of time where it left. And I said, okay, if this was gone during this window of time, then this is communication to me that this pain is not purely physical. This is not to say that pain doesn't have physical components when you feel it in your body. It often does. There's often a reason physically why you're having that activation in the body. But more often than not, pain is not purely physical, which is what I think it's very important to note. There is an energetic component to pain, and if it's not addressed, you end up living in chronic pain. And that is a huge part of the chronic pain situation that people are not looking at and they're not addressing, at least in the Western world when it comes to addressing chronic pain. They're not talking about the energetic component. They're looking at the body as a machine and how to fix the machine, and they don't realize that tinkering with the machine is only going to get you so far unless you really start going into what are the energetic components of that operational machine, because human beings are very complex. Their bodies are interwoven and affect each other. So that awareness really triggered something in me where I said, okay, so something's going on that wants my attention. And that's all I did. I didn't do any extra meditating. I just woke up every day and did my 15 minutes, same 15 minutes. I did my little journaling exercise that I always do. I did some yoga to stretch. I have so many yoga programs on that library, so I just picked whatever felt good to me that day and I did it. And then last night, I was real tired. I work a lot, you guys. To run a business online successfully, you gotta work. And I work a lot. I'm a full-time mom. I homeschool my kid. I clean my house, take care of my house, feed the family, and I work 8-9 hours, maybe, in bursts, and then at night until like midnight or 1 a.m. Okay, I work a lot. And I was finishing work and I was just in pain again. I was feeling that pain again, and I just got so frustrated. And all of a sudden, like, this activation of frustration moved that pain, and it literally felt like it moved up my body, and I just started crying. And I started crying and I started hearing myself think things like, I had a particularly difficult interaction with my son, which is always a trigger. Parenting is a huge trigger for my parents out there. You know what I'm talking about. And I was like, I'm a terrible mom. My kid would probably be better without me. I suck at this thing. I'm also a terrible leader. I don't offer the world any value. Like, I started to hear myself say things that felt very old. Things like, I'm not enough. Like, I could hear myself say when I was much younger that I felt pretty prominently for a lot of my life. I always felt like I had to overcompensate. I had to do more. I had to be more, to be of value, to be important, to be significant. And I found myself saying all of these things out loud and feeling them. And I was crying about it too. Like, I was in the emotion as if I really felt it. Even though it felt old, I was in it like it was happening in that moment. And at first I wanted to resist that experience, but I just let it happen. I was like, no, cry, feel this, that this sucks. And I wish I didn't have this. And I'm not enough for this. And I'm not, just feel that thing. And because I've practiced awareness for such a long time, in the middle of my emotional storm, I realized I felt no physical pain. Zero. None. Not a lightening of the physical pain. I felt no physical pain as I was crying and saying these things inside of myself. It was gone. So obviously I stopped crying. I ended up falling asleep in the middle of that crying session because I was already kind of laying down going to bed. I woke up with no physical pain. I slept with no physical pain. Today, I have no physical pain. And I have a lightness in my spirit that feels very different than the first week when I was initially detoxing. And in that moment, I recognized that how many of us live with pain in our bodies and we just think it's physical and we continue to carry it and treat it like it's a physical thing. And we never open the door for having a conversation with the pain and what the pain wants to tell us about us. That it could very well be an old story that you have about who you are, what you're capable or not capable of, that just became an activation in the body. But it really started as an activation in the mind and in the emotion. And we are very intelligent. You have to understand that the human is such a resilient organism, so it won't ever crumble unless it has no choice. So what it does when it experiences trauma or emotional affront or mental affront is it packages that up if it can't handle it in that moment, and it puts it somewhere. Okay? And oftentimes it puts it in the body. And I know this from experience, because when I would be doing body work and I would be working on women in particular in that low back area, many times I would have women start crying and regress to sexual trauma. Okay? I was just doing massage. But I was getting into the spine. I was getting into those lower lumbars. I was getting into the sacral work. I was opening up the fascia. And my work was always never super pressured. It was always very specific and very targeted. And it releases activations in the body. And when those release, they move into a different plane, which is like the emotional body or the mental body. That's why you'll be getting a massage and all of a sudden you'll have a memory come up. Like, why did I start thinking about that? That was a mental activation that got stored in the body somewhere. And the physical touch released it. Okay? Or, I had another case of a woman. I was massaging her neck and shoulders. Were super tight. She had chronic neck and shoulder pain. All of a sudden she starts crying. She starts thinking about her nephew who died. And that was such a traumatic experience for her. And she was carrying it in that part of her body, and she didn't even realize that. Okay? So this is how pain works and lives. So I just want you guys to understand that pain is multi-leveled, and it lives in different bodies, physical, emotional, mental, and it travels. So it oftentimes starts in the mental, emotional frame, and it lands somewhere in the body, and it just lives there. And we're just like, I've had this ache for 20 years. And it's really something that needs to be addressed here. Okay, so one of the ways that I'm realizing is the fastest way to address that is by clearing out the static or the noise when it comes to food and what you're putting in your body. Because what we also don't realize is that what we are eating is numbing us out. Your food, some of it is a numbing agent. It doesn't allow you to feel. It creates more static, okay? It creates density in the body. So it actually prevents you from accessing more subtle things like an emotional frequency or a mental frequency that needs to be untangled. So, and again, this is not to criticize a certain way of eating, but just by fact, meat and fat, high fat, saturated fat is very dense. So when you're consuming it, it doesn't really let you access something that's less dense because you are eating stuff that's dense. Some people process dense food just fine, but I'm talking about when you're doing this work where you're trying to sift. This is why people go on water fasts. This is why shamans go on long fasting journeys where they're consuming very little food, if any, because they're getting into the subtler realms of understanding. And if their body feels dense or preoccupied with something dense, they can't access that information. It's for the very same reason. Right? So whether you go back to eating meat after you finish doing like a vision quest or something like that is entirely individual. But when you're trying to access more etheric components, it's helpful to not have so much density in the body. So going for something like a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks where you're eating very lightly as far as not dense, so more plant-based, less dense, where you're hydrating profusely, really making hydration a huge part of your protocol, supplementing your body so your micronutrients are met. A lot of people don't realize that you have not just macro needs like protein, carbs, and fat, which are necessary, but you also have micro needs which feed your cells and help you function and connect optimally, right? So it's not a coincidence that every time I'm taking high doses of supplements that are really enlivening, it's like you work faster. Your brain works faster. You're smarter. It's almost like you're superhuman. And that's because you are working faster. You are communicating more quickly. You're definitely up to speed. And I haven't had caffeine in a week either. And I feel like ding, like wide awake, right? So reducing noise environmentally, the places that you're spending time, the people that you are around. I've spent a lot of time alone. I've spent a lot of time in quietude. I come into my office, I close that door, and whether my son is sleeping or he's with his dad or whatever, and I journal, I meditate, and I spend time with just myself to eliminate the external influences so that I can really listen to who I am and what I'm feeling, and I don't have that like input, okay? So food quiet, environmental quiet, and rituals. Rituals are really important. Having some place where you can ground your spirit every morning. And so when you're going into the world, you're going in with a heightened awareness instead of rushing into your phone and rushing into your responsibilities and rushing into all these things and bypassing those very quiet moments right when you wake up and those very quiet moments right when you go to sleep, which are the most fertile for information for you in the subtler realms, right? When the subconscious is leaving and the conscious is coming in the morning, or vice versa, when the conscious is leaving and the subconscious is coming in. Those windows of time are so fertile for visions and for understanding subtler components of your being. So those are just some ways that you can start doing that now. Hopefully this was insightful and helps you understand pain on a new level and activations in your body on a new level, and starts to open the door to that. What is this trying to communicate to me? Which is something I used to teach my clients, my bodywork clients, is like, when you feel a sensation, what is this trying to communicate? And sometimes it will be just physical, but more often than not, it's not. And I think that's a very worthy conversation to have with your body, and builds intimacy with your body, which for me is the ultimate goal, to have an intimate relationship with my body that feels safe and feels like home, right? So I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your weekend. Sending you all my love. Chat soon.